Okay, Margaret, take it away. Thank you, Margaret. Okay, here we be. Let us start with a review from last week, because I know the audio was bad last week and I apologize for that. We're going to discuss mantra meditation, which is yet another form of Jewish meditation, as you can see here. We've got the Amidah, we've got the Hit Bodhidut, we've got the Ruach HaKodesh, or enlightenment, and mantra meditation. Rabbi Nachman is big on it. We're going to be getting into him, but first we'll have a short review, and then we'll talk about best practices for meditation. Okay, I'm going to take a second look at what Marty had sent over. Marty sent over this really great quote and teaching from Rabbi Avigdor Miller. And he asks, is there a benefit to deep introspection? That's his question. And he says, if you get the knack of using your mind as a bucket and you lower the bucket into the depth of the soul, you'll discover that there's endless wisdom there. The longer the rope, the more deeply you can lower the bucket into your mind and draw forth precious wisdom that will flow without end. And what do you find there? The image of Hashem. And the reason why this is so knockout great is because it corresponds with exactly what we've been learning from both Rabbi Kaplan and Bhante, our resident expert on meditation, on how to do it. It's so good. If you get the knack of using your mind as a bucket and going deep, how do you develop the skill to do that? Through meditation. And we're going to be getting into it a little bit more detailed tonight. Mantra meditation can help you do that. All forms of meditation can help you do that. You develop the skill of letting your thoughts and feelings that pop into your mind pass on. And as Bhante describes, you go a little bit deeper into your subconscious to see what your frame of mind is. And that is going deep. That's exactly what Rabbi Miller is describing. And the deeper you go, the more you find. Why? Because you're tapping into more of your soul, that is your collective soul. And Rabbi Kaplan stated flat out, the deeper you go, the closer you get to God. So what Rabbi Miller is saying corresponds exactly to that. It's so fascinating and rewarding to see the same idea echoed from yet another scholar. Okay. So, mantra meditation. Let's continue with our review. Okay. We've heard of mantra meditation before in American culture. It used to be popular. They called it, a form of it was transcendental meditation. Remember that was very big in the 70s, maybe even before, certainly into the 80s. We have it. There is a Jewish form of that, which we'll get into. And as we described, it has a number of benefits. So it's multi-layered in how it affects you in a positive way. The first benefit is it relaxes the body. By focusing on the mantra, and we'll get into what that is in a second, it allows your body to let go of the tension. That's an interesting teaching, because what it's telling us is that you have to actively use your mind to hold on to tension in your body. But if you focus your mind on a certain something, then it's not going to be busy any longer retaining tension in wherever, your back or your arms, wherever it is. So that's very important to understand. Tension is a product of your mind holding on to the tension, and your mind can let go to it, and your body can therefore relax. Okay. Number 2. The mind becomes habituated to the mantra, and the mind quiets. Extraneous thought kind of fades away. So focusing on the mantra allows the body to relax and allows the mind to relax. Allows the body to relax because the focus on the mantra keeps the mind it helps the mind release the tension in parts of the body, and it relaxes the mind because it allows you to dismiss the clutter. Okay. The third benefit is that depending on what the mantra is, the mantra itself can have a spiritual power and put you into what Rabbi Kaplan calls a spiritual space. Meaning that if the words have a significance, and internally, if you keep repeating that word, your consciousness elevates because inside you understand what that is and you aspire to higher levels. The meaning of the words can prompt you can help you elevate your consciousness. That's the third benefit. He mentions that it's important to do it on a consistent basis. He recommends 30 minutes each day, that it be done daily, and that he mentions that it usually takes between 30 and 40 days to reap these benefits. Okay. And obviously, you don't bite off more than you can chew. The point is to be able to make it a regular habit. So you don't want to start off and do it for 30 minutes and upset your entire day, then get discouraged and say, forget about it. If you think you can only handle 10 or 15 minutes and you start with that and do that consistently, and then you can build on there. So the point is consistency then. Okay. But the daily repetition is very important. Why? Because you're forming a habit. You are conditioning yourself. Okay. He does mention that there is a biblical reference to mantra meditation. He says that the Hebrew verb hagah denotes a kind of meditation in which a word or sound is repeated over and over. And Rabbi David Kimchi writes that the word hagah denotes a sound or a thought that is repeated like the cooing of a dove or the growling of a lion. Okay, so there it's a particular sound. But there is an unambiguous reference to mantra meditation in mystical sources, in particular Hachalot Rabbatai. This is the primary text of Merkava mysticism, dating down back to Talmudic times. And the text presents a mystical name, in quotes, which is actually a rather long phrase consisting of a number of mystical words or names. And it must be repeated 120 times. Okay, this is mantra meditation. Okay. And as we said, just to touch on this advanced technique a little bit, what's so interesting about that is that these advanced practitioners that engage in this Hechalot Rabbatai meditation, they actually entered what Rabbi Kaplan calls a spiritual space, meaning using the mantra in this Hechalot Rabbatai meditation, they entered a state of consciousness from which they could continue climbing. So the purpose of the mantra meditation was like an elevator to get them up to the top floors, so to speak, of consciousness, where they could continue going. Okay, so that is the fourth benefit. It's very esoteric. Maybe at some point we'll all be advanced enough to do this, but he's describing 4 benefits a mantra meditation. First is relaxing the body, because again, by focusing the mind, you're not using your mind to hold tension in the body anymore. So the mind releases the tension in your body and your body relaxes. The second benefit is by focusing on something in your mind, you are able to dismiss the clutter and make in your mind and make your mind less busy, in essence, relaxing your mind. The third benefit is that you can actually elevate your consciousness by repeating words that have a significant meaning. There's certain, if you said garbage pail, it wouldn't have much spiritual meaning, but other words certainly would. And the fourth esoteric benefit is that you could use it as an elevator, my word, and go up into more spiritual space, which is mystical, but really interesting. Okay. He mentions that in Kabbalistic schools, biblical verses or portions of the Talmud or the Zohar were used as mantras. And interestingly, he says that by doing that, by using a biblical verse or a portion of the Talmud or the Zohar, that is a way of learning the verse. And what's interesting is he's basically describing a process in which you're intuitively understanding the verse. You're not using what Bhante would call your conceptual mind to analyze it, to memorize it, to parse it. You're using your intuition, your subconscious, to get the meaning of it. So he actually says that is a learning methodology. Okay. And he says that there's actually a precedent for this. Rabbi Joseph Caro, they use the Mishnah, and they repeated a portion of the Mishnah as a mantra. Okay. And he says that this particular type of mantra meditation is referenced in the Talmud itself, where he quotes, repeating one's Mishnah 100 times is not the same as repeating it 101 times. Okay, so this is the repetition of the Mishnah is a mantra meditation, and the Talmud's basically saying, you got to go for volume here. And you can do it 100 times, but it's not the same as doing it 101. It's talking about the penetrative power of the repetition. So we do have even a textual reference to mantra meditation, textual meaning from the Talmud regarding the learning of Mishnah. Okay, and he wraps up by saying that the Ari, quite the mystic, Rabbi Isaac Luria, did the same type of technique, repetition of a verse, but not with the Mishnah, but with a verse from the Zohar. And again, he used it as a method of learning, as opposed to intellectually trying to learn the verse. He used mantra meditation to intuitively understand the verse. And the Ari describes this experience by saying that the Zohar spoke to him, which is extraordinary. So he's basically saying that by repeating the verse from the Zohar, he communed with the verse. That's great kind of learning, and it spoke to him. And I made a reference last week at saying that like in martial arts, as I'm sure in many arts, you do a certain form enough and you get to embrace it and embody it, it speaks to you. And, I'm sure that people have said the same thing about musical pieces. They say, yes, that musical piece speaks to me. And that's what the Ari was saying about a passage in the Zohar when he used it for mantra meditation. So that's a fascinating and great connection to the verse. Okay. All right, good. So that's our review. We're good. Now we get into Rabbi Nachman. And he says, in relatively modern times, this is Rabbi Kaplan, A practical form of mantra meditation was prescribed by the Nordic Hasidic leader, Rebbe Nachman of Breslov, who lived at the end of the 18th century, early 19th century. Of all the Hasidic masters, none spoke of Hitbodedut meditation more than he. Hitbodedut meaning isolate yourself, isolate your mind. As we shall see, his main technique consisted in engaging in conversations with God. Nevertheless, Rabbi Nachman said that if a person does not know what to say, he should simply repeat the phrase Ribono Shel Olam, which in Hebrew is Hebrew for Master of the Universe. From the description of the technique, it seems obvious that Rabbi Nachman was prescribing the use of this phrase as a mantra to bring a person into a higher state of consciousness. Okay, so we've already discussed how conversing with God is itself a form of meditation. And Rabbi Nachman is saying, look, a lot of people have trouble getting started. What am I going to talk to you about, God? Okay. He says, all right, in the meantime, before you're ready to jump into the pool, use a mantra meditation and use Ribono Shel Olam. Because why? Because those words, even if you don't know a lot of Hebrew, at least you can understand, you give yourself the translation of that phrase, Master of the Universe. Repeating the phrase, Master of the Universe, Master of the Universe, Master of the Universe is going to bring you closer to God. You're going to have more recognition, more awareness, more elevation, because that's what you're saying. You are programming yourself to be thinking, so to speak, subconsciously about God. Here too, Rabbi Nachman did not regard repeating the mantra as an end in itself. Rather, he saw it as a way of opening the mind in order to enter into conversation with God, a method that he maintained was the best way to get close to God. Still, he saw repetition as an important technique in its own right. Okay, let me just get over here. Okay. Interesting. So his strategy was to use mantra meditation to get you in the mood to converse with God. So maybe you're reluctant, maybe you're shy, do mantra meditation for 10 minutes, 15 minutes and say, all right, God, I'm warmed up. Let's talk about whatever. Okay. Since the phrase Ribono Shel Olam was prescribed as a mantra-like device by Rabbi Nachman, some people refer to it as Rabbi Nachman's mantra. Some, for the sake of authenticity, prefer the Hasidic pronunciation, Ribono Shel Olam. Okay. In any case, it is an ideal phrase for anyone who wants to engage in an authentic Jewish mantra meditation. Nothing against anybody that speaks that way, but it's really hard, I think, to understand Hebrew if you speak it that way and try to understand what people are saying. But whatever floats your boat. Not only was it prescribed by one of the great Hasidic masters, but the phrase itself was used as an introduction to prayer as far back as early Talmudic times. The expression Ribono Shel Olam was used as early as the 1st century before the Common Era by Shimon ben Shattach, and according to the Talmud, it was also used in biblical times. So here, we have another textual reference. He says, in the Talmud, it refers to the use of the phrase Ribono Shel Olam in meditation. Mantra meditation is one of the simplest types of meditation. It is therefore a good place to begin if you wish to embark on a program of meditation. Rabbi Nachman's mantra, Ribono Shel Olam, is a good one with which to start. It also provides an excellent example of meditation in general. I would also add that since we just came up off the Yomim Noraim davening, that liturgy is chock full of phrases. So that if one of those rang your bell, whether you're davening at home or davening in the congregation, wherever, if one of those rang your bell, I bet you it would be sort of a very useful purpose to say that one, because it has personal meaning to you. Hoshiana, whatever the phrase would be. Okay. Okay, now, you cannot begin a program of meditation without a certain degree of commitment. In order for it to have an effect, you must do it on a daily basis, spending at least 20 or 30 minutes repeating the mantra. If you do it every day, the effects become cumulative. Key point. The effects of its conditioning. You're conditioning your mind, and it accumulates. Like, for example, if you wanted to do push-ups and you did 10 today and it provided some benefit, and you didn't do another 10 until next month, you'd be starting over again next month or pretty close to it. So if you did half-hour meditation today and you didn't do it again until next week, you're kind of starting over. Starting over meditation means that it's harder to get to the level that you had achieved prior. If you do it consistently, and I'm sure at this point, you guys are finding this out, if you meditate consistently, then you end up getting into an elevated state or relaxed state quicker because you're conditioned to it. You're already there, so to speak. Okay, that's consistency. It's very, very important. However, when you miss or skip days, the cumulative effect is lost. Furthermore, it takes several weeks of discipline with a mantra to attain a full level of a higher state of consciousness. Some effects may be manifest immediately, but it takes a few weeks before you experience the full effects. If you have the commitment, the results can be striking. At this point, word of warning. At this point, a word of warning is in order. Mantra meditation is a fairly safe method for most people, but it can be dangerous for someone with a history of mental illness. If a person's connection to the real world is not strong, to begin with, he may have difficulty reestablishing his connection with reality after a deep meditative experience. I actually know people to whom that's happened. Just as certain forms of strenuous exercise must be avoided by people with a history of heart trouble, certain forms of mental exercise should be avoided by people with a history of mental illness. The Talmudic story of Ben Zoma, who lost his mind after a particularly intense meditative experience, serves as a warning. Any person with doubts about his mental stability should make sure that he has an expert guide before becoming involved with any type of intense meditation. And I think that also brings to mind that to be cautious if you don't have like any kind of mental illness, but if you're having a really bad day and you're very upset, let's say, you got to watch what type of meditation you do, because you can really throw yourself off because you're in a fragile state already. Maybe you're not normally in a fragile or vulnerable state, but if you're having a real bad day, you could be. So you don't want to go for broke. If you're like that, you just maybe want to do the meditation that we do. Focal point, breathe, focal point, that kind of calm yourself, get over the agitated state, and then you can go for it a little bit deeper if you're so inclined, but that's a key point. So it's not just if you have a chronic mental illness, but if you're temporarily out of sorts, you'll have to be careful in both cases. So we'll go a little bit further. At this point, we got that. In general, the preparations for meditation are straightforward and simple. Actually, what preparations? I'm going to stop here and continue in 2 weeks. 2 weeks with the preparations because it's a big chunk. Okay. Now, let me just see something here. Let's see if we want to go into this. Now, this corresponds with what Bhante says. One of these days, we're going to get into what Matt Fury says, but not right now. Okay, let's go to Bante. Okay. All right, he's been making a very sophisticated point, which we're going to have to wrestle with a little bit because it's sophisticated and it's requires a little bit of probing. But what he's been saying is he's been talking about the role your mind plays when you have a physical sensation. Like he says, when you hear something, you're meditating and there's a sound and it's just a sound. But oftentimes we embellish that experience of hearing the sound with all kinds of mental stuff. What is that? Who is that? Is it because of my neighbor? Oh, I don't like my neighbor. Oh, are they leaving the door open? Boom, 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 boom. We add all that stuff. Okay. And he's encouraging us to realize that we add all this stuff to daily experience, our daily experience of the sensory world, and that the one of the problems that creates is we don't enjoy or get to fully experience what we're sensing in the first place. We could have a sound that might even be rather pleasant, and if we add all the mental stuff and imagery and dialogue and commentary onto it, we can not fully enjoy the pleasantness of it. So you could see how we do that, not just in meditation, but we do that ordinarily with what people are saying, what people do. We add all this other stuff onto it. Okay. Okay. And he says, there are times when a number of sensations may arise. Here we were just talking about a specific sound that you're hearing and adding all the stuff on it. So what happens when you have multiple sounds or multiple sensory experiences? You might have a thought of fear squeezing in the stomach, an aching back, and an itch in your left earlobe all at the same time. Don't sit there in a quandary. Don't keep switching back and forth on wondering what to pick. One of them will be strongest. Just open yourself up, and the most insistent of these phenomena will intrude itself and demand your attention. So give it to some attention just long enough to see it fade away. Then return to your breathing. If another one intrudes itself, let it in. When it is done, return to the breathing. Really key point. So here you are sitting, meditating, and like, oh, wait a minute, I got an itch in my head, I get my foot's asleep. 3 things going on. Okay, what do? He basically is making the point that if you just forget about the nervousness of choosing, your body will tell you. It's like, no, this, you got to do something about this. All right, so you do something about the itch. You do it, it's like almost like triage. Your body's basically telling you, please take care of this one first. Listen to your body. And then you know which order to do it in because your body's telling you. And then you're good and you go back to your meditation. So key point being, listen to your body in those situations as to what you should be paying attention to. Trust your body. This process can be carried too far, however. Don't sit there looking for things to be mindful of. Keep your mindfulness on the breath until something else steps in and pulls your attention away. When you feel that happening, don't fight it. Let your attention flow naturally over to the distraction and keep it there until the distraction evaporates. Then return to breathing. Don't seek out other physical or mental phenomena. Return to breathing. That's really interesting. That's how the mind works, because basically, let's say you're sitting there and you got an itch in your ear and you got a backache and your foot's asleep. You have relaxed and let your body instruct you, first go to the foot, now then go to the back, then go to the ear. and you've developed a little routine, just an instant routine. And what Bhante is saying is that the tendency is then, all right, what else should I look for now? Wait, no, it was only 3 things to look for. Stop looking, go back to the breath. You set up a little quick habit, a little quick process that you have a tendency to keep fueling. That's going to be, you're going to create your own distraction. So you did that, no more, it's at just 3, back to the breath. And it reminds us, even after long practice, you can find yourself suddenly waking up, realizing you have been off track for a while. Don't get discouraged. Realize that you have been off the track for such and such a length. That's a technique he taught us, like to be mindful, like, oh yeah, I think I've been thinking about salami sandwiches for 3 minutes. Okay, well, at least I know that. Realize that you've been on track for such and such length of time and go back to the breath. There is no need for any negative reaction at all. The very act of realizing that you have been off the track is an act of awareness. It is an exercise of pure mindfulness all by itself. That's the fail-safe. That's why these techniques can never fail, and you can never be a failure. Because you can say, oh, that's me thinking I'm a failure. You're all of a sudden mindful again. Oh, that's me kicking myself because, once again, I lost track of the focal point. Well, okay, now you're mindful again. That's me scratching my back, realizing I shouldn't be scratching my back. And that's me laughing at myself, catching myself. You know, you get all these mindful, everything can be mindfulness once you realize you're doing it. So that's why this is a godsend. That's why it is always, you're always able to improve yourself spiritually, because you could always raise your level of self-awareness. And just as an aside, if you look at all the vidui and stuff, like in the Yom Kippur liturgy and stuff, you know, that is like a huge exercise in self-awareness. Achet, 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 achet. You know, page after page after page after page. It's all awareness, so that, you know, it's so that when, if you took it seriously, it's still ringing true in your brain. And so you're going forward as a, oh, that's me doing this again. Oh, that's me doing that again. You know, the whole part of that liturgy can make you mindful of all the stuff that gets you off the derrick type of stuff. And your practice in meditation can help you enhance your mindfulness skill. So the next time you do 30 different sins, then he's like, oh yeah, I got to remember this stuff. Yep, there I am doing it again. There I am doing it again. Oh, eating that Twinkie, whatever it is. Okay, all this stuff, you know. So much of that liturgy is making you aware of stuff that you need to be aware of after Yontif type of stuff. It's really, we have this colossal structure for self-improvement. It is just astonishing. If people looked at it that way, they would blow their minds at what we do. Okay. We will continue this in 2 weeks. Okay. Let us stop sharing. Ready, Margaret?